I wonder if it's appropriate for you to talk a little bit now about this next venture that you have, that you've been studying hope.
After I finished the book Divine Signatures, and I was thinking about where to go next, I have a delightful calling in our ward. I teach a monthly class to our ward as part of our spiritual and temporal preparation efforts. And in that same time, I was wrestling with what to do. I'd started to notice that more and more I was hearing people just talk about how tough life is for them right now. And I mean, this is right when the economic crash came, and I mean, we got people out of work, and you're seeing retirees going back to work at Walmart and these places, McDonald's, because they can't survive because they lost all their retirement. And it was that, and I met a man who had been active in the church his whole life, held a lot of positions in the priesthood, and his basic response was, you know what, I've tried it all, I've prayed, I've been faithful, I've served in the church. God doesn't hear my prayers. That means he doesn't care. I've had it. I'm through with it. And left the church. And that last one was the most dramatic. But, for example, one day in fast meeting, a fellow in our ward got up and basically said farewell to the ward. And I didn't know anything about this, but he said that they were going to be moving and so on. And then he got quite emotional, and he said, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life is try to explain to my 16-year-old why we're moving in with Grandma. So anyway, I was hearing all this kind of stuff, and so I decided this one night I was just going to do one of my classes on hope. I get to choose the topics, and so I did, and we talked about why is it faith, hope, and charity? Frankly, I used to think, why isn't it faith, revelation, and charity, or faith and repentance and charity,
or obedience,
or obedience and charity? I mean, faith, yes, I can see that. Charity, yes, but hope seems kind of a, And so as I started studying it, I just began to sense that here was the answer to these problems. Why is it that some people, we talked earlier about the strength of the pioneers and their faithfulness and so on. But there's some that weren't.
That's true.
You don't have to read too far to find out the stories of dropout pioneers.
No.
Who are facing no more difficult challenges than some of the faithful ones. So what makes the difference? Why does one stay faithful, maybe even strengthened by adversity, where somebody else says, that's it, I'm out of here, turns bitter and so on? And that has intrigued me for a long time. Doesn't intrigue me anymore. I know the answer. The difference is hope. Remember a couple of 2 or 3 conferences ago, President Uchtdorf talked about hope, and he defined it as trust in the promises of the Lord. He said, hope is not knowledge, it's trust in the promises of the Lord. And when you hear, as I just recently did, of a woman who lost a teenage daughter to an automobile accident, she said, she talked about the pain and the loss, and even now, 2 or 3 years later, just the tiniest thing will set her off, and she just starts to cry for her loss. But she says, I choose hope. I know where she is, and I choose hope. And I thought, that's the difference. That's what brings the strength. And so I decided to turn it into a book, and it's been a great, really difficult, actually, probably the most difficult one I've written for some reason, but a really great learning experience for me personally.